Welcome to this week's episode of the Aiming Five Hole Podcast with Phil and Ryan. Hey Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I
Good.
want to start off by apologizing that we did not do an episode last week. I had the twin misfortunes of both blowing out my knee skiing and coming down with the flu at the same time.
You're
I
like a
was in
double
no
whammy,
shape.
man. You're like,
Yeah, I was in no shape to record a podcast or to have insight into just about anything other than my own misery.
did you pile drive into a mogul and put some snow up your nose? Is that why you get a cold from the snow and the cold? Like, what'd you do? Like, what happened?
I got a little bit aggressive on a part of a very big mountain where you don't normally get too aggressive.
Oh, that's not good. Well,
Yeah.
I got unscathed the week before you, so sorry that you're not feeling well, and sorry about your knee. But now it's gonna make it easier for me to go around you on the ice if we ever got on the ice together.
I don't think it would be that hard to begin with.
I don't know,
So
I'm
we
old
had
and
a yeah,
slow.
but
So busy week.
yeah, like we've got I won't say we have 2 weeks of stuff to catch up on because that would be insane to try to catch up on 2 weeks. We're just gonna pretend the week before never happened. We had a
Yeah.
trade.
Well, what we can give you, everybody, in case people are living under a rock or didn't see or don't understand how big trade deadline was, there was 27 trades on Friday for trade deadline. There was 40 trades since March 1st.
That's
So
crazy.
from March 1st to March 7th, there was 40 trades, and there were a couple doozies in there overall. But
Yep.
it's just crazy about how busy it was and how manic it was. And it seems like I'll start with my Leafs. Like
Yeah, we'll
I
start at
wrote,
least because, well, mostly because the Canadians didn't do anything. So that's
yeah,
a other than they signed Jake Evans, and I think that's
yeah.
fantastic.
Who
But
was on the Leafs board apparently. But that's, I wanted to say, like I wrote you, I think, what time was it? 12:30 going, are the Leafs going to do anything? I watched TSN's Trade Center from almost the beginning to the end and
oh yeah,
then
this was the day that almost was for Toronto. Now they
yeah,
didn't do nothing, but it was the day that almost
I didn't do much that day. I had my wife's car at the dealership. I had the computer on there. I got home. I had the
was.
computer on the whole day on my lap while I'm trying to do other things. But it was crazy. Again, I wrote to you at 12:30 going, what are the Leafs doing? What are they going to do? And then reading all the reports since then, no disrespect to Lawton and Carlo, but they were plan D. If you believe all the rumors out there that the Leafs wanted Brock
Yep.
Nelson didn't want to come to Canada. The Leafs obviously wanted Braden Shen. He wouldn't move his no trade clause. They were in deep on Mikko Rantanen. They again, depending on what rumors you believe, they were offering Fraser Mitten, and Easton Cowan, the two very high um, kids in the
Prospects.
minors, prospects in the minors, two first rounders. And if you believe it, Carolina didn't want to send them to the East. They wanted to send them to the West, and they said no. They asked for Marner. Marner wouldn't waive his no trade clause, and the Leafs wouldn't give them Nyes, which I wouldn't have given Nyes. I would have done the Marner Ratnan straight
Well, hang
up.
on a second. You would well, it depends what the rest of the package is for Nyes, right? Like
Yeah,
if
Nyes
it's
got so much
Nyes, Cowan,
upside.
and two firsts, then that's too much.
It
But
might be saying too much, and Nyes might never become a 100-goal scorer, but Nyes has the potential to be the Mikko Rantanen light, size wise, skating wise,
yeah,
and maybe not get to the points that he's getting. I don't
he
know if
doesn't
he'll
have the
ever be
finish, but
he doesn't have the
yeah,
100 points in him probably, but he has the potential to be Mikko Rantanen light
yeah,
in my mind. So it would have been harder to see him go in the other way. Plus, he's so much younger.
yeah, and
But
under control for a long
yeah,
time.
so again, I'll say it now because it's going to be said at some point in this podcast. If Ron was here on here, he'd be riffing on why Domi's son wasn't traded. And I will say, and I said this before the trade deadline, I will be disappointed if
Nick
Nick
Robertson,
Robertson was a Leaf after Friday, and he's still a Leaf.
they
And
couldn't
I
give him
couldn't believe
away.
he played on Saturday over Carl Yarncroc. Like I got excited during the day that he was listed as a bench, being on the bench, and I'm like, but in terms of the Leafs, you know what? Did they improve their team from Thursday to Friday? Absolutely. Lawton is a good two-way center, maybe not as good defensively. He has some upside on the on
He's a
the
good 3C.
offensive
I'll take it.
side.
He's a strong 3C. I think they
Yeah,
did
he's
very
a
well getting him.
yeah.
They
We
didn't
needed
give
a
up
third
that
line.
much.
Yeah, we needed a third line center. We got it. But you know what? Carlo. Oh my God, getting someone like Carlo and he's got term. He's got 5 years left on his current deal at a
Yeah.
pretty reasonable AAV. So we have our top 5D are all locked up for 3 to 5 years.
And
It's a
other than and
strong.
other than Morgan Riley, they're friggin' huge.
Yeah, and I think the only one that's not signed long term is Benoit. So,
Yeah.
um, I that's a solid D. Look, forget if we win or not this year. Our D, if it's healthy, is pretty good. So that was a great ad. But when you think of what it could have been, Mikko Rantanen and what the others around us have done, Florida has made themselves better. Tampa Bay has made themselves better. Um, did we do enough? We'll see.
Yep.
You know
Yep.
what? We had a tough weekend. We lost um, to the
Colorado.
Avs, although they played them really well for 2.5 periods. We had a tough one against the Knights, losing against the Knights, and we never should have lost to the Sharks and in OT. But we had 5 strong wins before that. Some good, some bad, but teams we should have won. So it was sort of a mixed bag week. But look, at coming out of the week, did we improve the team? Yes. Did we do enough to go deep? I don't know. It's going to be a dogfight coming out of the East. If we have to play Tampa Bay or Florida in the first round, then we're going to play the other one in the second round if we can get by it.
Yep.
That's tough. We'll see.
They-
But both Florida and Tampa Bay made some good moves too, like Seth Jones to Florida,
Brad Marchand to Florida.
Brand
I
Marchand
can't
in
believe I
a
have
in a
yet another reason to hate the
Florida.
Panthers. This is fantastic. I was
But
so excited to see
the
that
rat
trade.
line.
Right? Could you imagine they put Marchand, Bennett, and Kachuk together on a line?
Look, everybody's talking about it, and I'm not convinced. I know there's everybody they're saying Mark Stone did it. They did it. Tampa Bay did it with
Kucherov.
Kucherov. That miraculously on day one of the playoffs, um, dumbass number one Kachuk is going to be healthy. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced he's going to be healthy for the playoffs. And if he does come back for the playoffs, he might be a bit of a China doll the rest of the season. Whatever's ailing him, we don't know what it is. It's
Yeah.
a knee, it's a hip, it's his sternum, whatever he hurt the last time. I'm not convinced he comes back. And if he doesn't come back, I don't care what they got. That's a big loss for them.
Yeah. 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 Look, I think they're between Kachuk's injury and whether or not, and the mystery as to whether or not Bobrovsky can play like he did last year and the year before in the playoffs. Like
Yeah, it's a big
it's a
question
big
mark.
if. It's a big if.
They're pretty strong
But
on the back end.
I have a Toronto question for you.
Of course you do.
And I think this is an interesting question, and I don't know if I've heard any of the experts or pundits talk about it. Which isn't to say that hey, I'm ahead of everybody else. I'm a genius, but I am. But the 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 question of whether or not Marner declined to trade to Carolina for Rantanen or not, but he refused to permit a trade. Let's just say. And he refused to say permit a trade to a player who ended up signing for $12 million a year. Does he now kind of limit himself in what he asks for from the Leafs?
Yeah, I think, obviously the Ratnan deal puts a benchmark on that player. Now he's gone to a state with a tax-friendly market versus Marner playing in Canada and playing in a bigger tax market. Although me living in the States, I will tell you now, cash in, cash out, it's not a lot different. Yes, cost of living is different and whatnot, but depending on where you're living, even I'm living here in Florida, which is a tax-free state. I'll tell you right now, living expense when it comes to house, taxes, car, insurance, all that stuff is way more expensive here because it's a tax-free state. So it's kind of cashing in. But yes, I think he's now looking at, because he's living in Canada, maybe 13 max. I think maybe that's the number. You're going to probably have to give him a little bit more for Ratnam because it's in Canada and the taxes, but in a higher cost of living.
Huh?
But yeah, I think it's
Because
definitely made that
yeah, I think
negotiation interesting. But he's holding all the cards now. We're past the deadline. He can go to free agency. He's refusing to seemingly have discussions. He's saying all the right things. He wants to be here long term. His wife is pregnant, recently pregnant. I think there's 5 or 6 months she's pregnant. So I don't think he wants to go anywhere, but
Yeah.
the numbers
Yeah.
will be the numbers, and he's going to get a lot of offers out there. Now, a lot of it will determine how far if they go out in the first round of the playoffs and he's invisible, I think it hurts his
Yeah.
chances. If they get 2 or 3 rounds in, they go to the cup final, obviously it helps them, right? So I think the playoffs will still have a bit of a determination on what he's able to get, but we think that at this point, Rantanen has put a number out there that, depending on where you are, is a benchmark for sure.
Yeah. I think the Leafs are looking pretty good. Stolarz, I'm assuming Stolarz is going to start in net in the playoffs. They've got a big, competent, not star, but competent blue line behind him. If they can get just a little bit of gritty scoring, and
Yeah.
Scott Laughton is certainly going to help with that, I think they could be in pretty good shape. But Tampa is a little deeper than they
Yep.
were. But
They're
I
still
sent you the
shaky on the
screenshot.
point.
I
I
sent you the
think there's
screenshot of their blue line. It's not
yeah,
scaring me.
they're still streaking. Look at we said this before the playoffs. We said this before the deadline. We said this after the Four Nations. Defense is going to win the Stanley Cup final. Defensive play, maybe not defense, but defensive play is going to win the playoffs. The Leafs definitely came out of the trade deadline way stronger on the back end. We're obviously strong in goal. Our problem is going to be, as it always has, is finding scoring outside of our big four. And
Yep.
it's been that problem all year. Scott Laughton, I'm sorry, doesn't necessarily answer that question, Mark. And since the beginning of the month, Matthews is a bit missing. Since the Four Nations, he's not
Yeah, but
scored.
he was kind of banged up at the Four Nations. I mean, there
Yeah.
might be more to it
There's
than
got to be.
people are
He's got to
letting
have
on.
something wrong with him. But we need him healthy. We need him to score. We need Nylander to score. We need the top guys to do more, and we need some more. Look at it. What has been nice since the Four Nations, there has been more secondary scoring and more scoring from the defense, which has been great. We need that to keep up, and we need the big boys now to step up too.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but enough about the Leafs. They got a tough week coming up because they play Utah this week, and then they play Florida and Ottawa at the back end of the week, and that's
Yeah.
got to beat Ottawa. Um, we can't. We got to beat Bruins. Did us a favor beating Tampa Bay on the weekend because, or we'd be sitting in third place right now.
Right.
So,
I don't want to go back to the Tampa Bay. Like I said, they've picked up some good depth forwards. They got Yanni Gord back, which is great.
yep,
But I mean, and I don't want to take anything away from Andre Vasilevsky. The guy has been an absolute tear, like Hellebuck-ish,
yep.
the last few weeks. But their D is Eric Cernak, Victor Hedman, Emil Lilleberg, the
McDonough.
ageless Ryan McDonough, JJ Moser, somebody named Nick Perbix,
Yeah.
and Darren Radish. That's not scaring anyone.
No, and right now Hedman's a bit banged up too because he's been out for a few games. So,
Yeah, like that's
yeah,
not scaring anybody.
I
So
agree. You need Hedman to stand on your head, but they're going to score. Remember what we said before, and they're
the highest scoring
currently
team in the league, right? Or
second
whatever.
highest scoring team in the league. So,
Yeah, so they're going to score goals, but like in the playoffs,
right,
you're like you said, defense wins
right,
championships.
right.
So let's who well, I don't want to
Let's
talk
go to
about
the
Florida.
Habs because
We
we
talked
let's
about
stick
Florida
to
a little
our
bit.
Habs. So you guys
All right,
didn't
so we'll
make a big
talk about
moves, but you made some great signings. You extended some guys.
yeah, we talked we I talked about signing Jake Evans. I love the way the kid plays.
Yeah.
One of the best penalty killers in the league. He's got some zone entry push to him. He carries the puck pretty well. Doesn't make dumb decisions with it. He's physical. He's like your prototypical fourth liner. And he can play up the lineup a little bit. He can be a third liner if he needs to. Like I can't wait for him to mature. He's 28. Like to stay on this team for another 4 years, play the role that he does. Signing him sends a message to the rest of the team that management is, no longer enamored with collecting third and fourth round picks for the purposes of trading them for other assets at some point down the road. Now, granted, they've lost both games since then, they've lost both games since the signing. But that said, they look good in both of them.
But they lost one in OT. They lost the Oilers
They
in
lost an
OT.
OT in Edmonton and they lost 1-0
Right.
to
Against Calgary.
my new rookie of the year Calder candidate.
Yes.
I wanted it to be Lane Hudson, but after watching what Dustin Wolf did to the
Well,
Canadians last night,
if Lane
maybe he's
Hudson
the
keeps putting
guy.
up the numbers he's putting up, he might get it anyway.
Yeah, he's pretty
But
he's pretty
Celebrini's
amazing.
putting up pretty good numbers too, and just name appeal, he might squeak out.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? They always give it to like they need. There should be a bias against the number one draft pick,
Yeah, no
right? Like you
kidding.
were drafted number one, you should be lapping the field to win the
Right.
Calder.
Well, it's not going to help him. He's on the West Coast either.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
but let's go back. So they didn't make a lot of moves at the deadline. In fact, they didn't make any,
They didn't make any.
which is fine
Yep.
because they're sort of bouncing at the 3 points out of the second playoff spot. Ottawa and Columbus both made moves. Ottawa made some interesting moves, getting
Cousins.
Cousins and giving up on Frost. So like, how do you feel about their chances to make the playoffs? They're above 500, which is where you hope they were going to be this year. Do you think they're going to be able to squeak in or no?
Ottawa, I think.
No, I meant
Oh,
Canadians.
Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Montreal. Look, I think Montreal was going to be a 500 team from the beginning. I
You've been
think they
saying
will
that all
be.
along.
I think they will be a 3 or 4 game over 500 team before all is said and done. They'll miss the playoffs. I'm guessing by 4 or 5 points, and they're going to give up on some of their own rentals. Um, Dvorak isn't coming back. I think they may try to sign Yoel Armia to continue the PK pairing with Jake Evans. I think they let David Savard go, and they're going to let David Reinbacher come in next year. Maybe he'll have a crack at Rookie of the Year next year. And then they'll have a little bit of money to play with.
So you're feeling
And
pretty good overall, even though they might not make the playoffs. You're feeling pretty good.
the directionally, this team is going to be scary in 2 years.
Great. So
They're going.
so here's the next question for the playoffs. What number do you want me to put on your Toronto Maple Leafs jersey I'm sending you? Because you're going to be voting for the Toronto. You
All right,
you
you
got to be sitting in my.
put on number 67. Put on number 67.
I knew you were going to say that. We need him back healthy. I can't believe I'm saying that. But I thought you were going to laugh in my face, going, "There's no way you're voting for the Leafs." But
the day I wear Maple Leafs jersey is the day they beat the Canadians in the playoffs, and we will have a bet of some sort with
there
them.
you go.
My buddy,
Okay.
my buddy Ted and I he's a big Bruins fan. He and I have a standing bet. If the Bruins and the Canadians play, the loser has to wear the other team's jersey and have a selfie taken and posted on Facebook from a very public place. We've only had the bet once, but I've got a great picture of Ted wearing the jersey in Times Square because he's living in New York, and yeah, he took some abuse for it online,
There
and
you
I think
go.
that's why it's a good bet.
I still need to win my $100 bill that's put in a frame
Under
to
glass.
you back. The Leafs have to play the Canadians at some point again, so I get my money back. But you mentioned this, like before we get into the West and the
Good
monster
Lord.
moves that happened there. If you are David Pasternak and Charlie McAvoy, who just signed big deals to stay with the Bruins, are you hating yourself right now? Like, are you like
No,
pissed
not
at the team?
necessarily. Not
They just gave
necessarily.
away 5 players.
Well, it's because the management has come to them. I guarantee you, they're smart. Maybe not Cam Neely, but the rest of them are smart.
Okay. Cam Neal's
And
still the best power forward ever to play the game.
yeah, but they went to those players before or as this was all going down and sold them on we are the Capitals, not the Blackhawks. We are the Capitals, not the Blackhawks. Give us a chance. This is a retool, not a rebuild. We've we pulled in we pulled in some new players. We got Henry Jokiharju from Buffalo. That's a player in. We got a lot of draft picks in that we're going to use to trade for
Was he
players.
that Finnish defenseman I couldn't say his name at the Four Nations?
Phil, who's the Finnish defenseman whose name you could say at the Four Nations?
True. Very true fact.
But
Hey,
yes,
look,
I
they got
believe I
Fraser
believe
Minton
it
from
was.
Toronto. A very solid two-way centerman. They got some
Yep.
draft picks out of the Leafs.
Yep. So I do think that they are trying to sell them on a retool. Whether or not they'll be successful at it is another matter entirely. But that's what they're selling Pasta and McAvoy on.
Okay, so now the other one is that if the Marchand trade, which they got a second conditional second round pick, if they go 2 rounds or go to the Stanley Cup, it becomes a first,
Right.
which is still a bottom end pick.
Yeah.
Um, but still bottom end first round pick.
Yep.
Florida has a chance to get
Could be
there.
something. Florida could also go out in the first round.
A- Absolutely. But it's gonna be interesting. So let's shift ourselves to the West.
To West.
And
Dallas, 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 Dallas,
the
Dallas,
arms race
Dallas.
that happened in the Central Division. Like if the Avs, the Jets, and and Dallas, like, oh my God, that is going to be a death cage match to the final there. As much as it is important to win the Eastern Division, it's monumentally more important to win the Central
The
Division
Central.
because if you don't want to play the Avs, those three teams don't want to play each other in the first round.
No.
Someone's going to lose, and any one of those three teams could go to the Stanley Cup final.
Yep.
And someone's going to lose in the first round, and somebody's going to lose in the second round, which is, we can talk about it later. I still believe the playoff format needs to change and go to the NBA style where you play in your division for the season and then you play in the conference and one
Yeah.
to eight.
You just seat it
So
full.
you
Yeah.
don't have this issue because I think it's a little unfair, but man, Mikko Rantanen just took well, first of all, the Avalanche took Carolina for to the town, then Dallas took them to town in terms of
If you would have asked them, are you going to trade Martin HS for Logan Stankovic in two firsts?
well, considering what was on the board from Toronto potentially,
It's actually
or
not that horrible a trade.
by the way, we didn't talk about it. Edmonton tried to get Rantanen too. We don't know what was on the other side of that. If you believe the rumors, Edmonton tried hard to get Rantanen as well. So they
Well,
probably just didn't
yeah,
have
but they
they
would
didn't
have
have the
had.
picks and didn't
Yeah,
didn't
they
have
didn't have the
someone.
resources. And
Yeah.
by the way, they would have had to trade some salary off the team to make that happen as well. They would have been in a scenario where it was McDavid, Rantanen, and Draisaitl, and then a bunch of third line players from the Irish Professional Hockey League because like they couldn't afford to have anybody else,
Well, no question. But wow, it's
and they got
just
no better in goal. I can't believe they didn't get Gibson. I
it
cannot
just
believe they didn't trade for Gibson.
well, did you listen to Stan Bowman's press conference afterwards?
No.
He was going, I agree. The beginning of the season they came out slow, then they've had some good points, then they've gone through a little slump, but we're confident they have. I'm sorry, I just don't agree with them. I think the Oilers went from the Stanley Cup favorite to potentially going out in the first round.
Yep.
I think they're begging to play the Kings in the first round because they seem to have their number in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Kings didn't do much. I mean,
Right.
Andre Kuzmenkov is not Kuzmenko is not
Right.
a needle mover by any stretch of the
No.
imagination.
No. So, Oilers to me just okay, they got Waldman as a puck moving defenseman, but he didn't answer the needs that they have. It's, defensive defenseman, goaltending, secondary scoring. They didn't solve any of their problems that they currently have this year. And
Yeah.
I just, you know what? They won the other night, but I just don't see how there might like we'll talk about the end of this going out of this where we see now our favorites have changed from where we our predictions earlier, but I don't see where they finish. Could they come out of that division, let alone out of the West?
Yep.
The Jets made some moves. They got Tanev, who's a pesky. They needed to get bigger on their second line, and he's a pest. And he's already
Yep.
watching the game a little bit last night. He already was disruptive and getting in there, making some craziness. And then who else did they pick up again? I forget who the other player they picked up.
Uh,
They picked up, and I'm just trying to find it here. Sorry, I just blanked on it. I thought I had it written down. I did not. They made another move that was somewhat significant. They got somebody on the back end. Who'd they get? Oh, they got Luke Shen. Um,
Shens aren't moving the needle at this point.
no. Like, okay, he's a stay-at-home defenseman, blocks a lot of shots.
Yep.
He's slow as hell, especially compared to their team, who's like the wickedly fast. So you know what, the Jets as well. I think they've got to win that division, or they could have trouble. They could be out in the first round, or they're going. Helly Buck's going to have to stand on his head. for the playoffs, and he's not done that so
Yeah,
far.
well, all it's like so a lot. Like all these goalies are going to have to play really well because there's a lot
Yeah,
of firepower on all these teams. But
yeah,
Dallas picks up Rantanen. They're going to get Tyler Seguin back for the playoffs. Like they're a loaded ass team, and Heskinen. They'll get
absolutely.
Heskinen back too. Like
Yep, yep, yep.
they are a loaded team. I am
And the
really
color, sorry,
looking forward to watching them play in the
yeah.
playoffs.
In
Um,
Colorado, adding Charlie Coyle, again, a pesky forward. I would have loved to seen him on a Leafs lineup. Obviously, they added Pesce, and Pesce's has actually gelled with that team really, really well, and
yeah,
they haven't missed a step losing Rantanen in terms of the scoring side of things.
yep.
So,
Oh, you
you
mean
know,
Natchez?
Natchez, sorry, Natchez,
Yeah.
Pesce, Natchez. So they're looking good too. I still say the problem is going to be goaltending when it comes to Colorado. And give Blackwood $5 million doesn't make him a star goaltender in my mind. He's looking good on that team because they got a decent team in front of them. But when they
Yep.
won the cup, they didn't have to go through the gauntlet they're going to have to go through this time. So
Yep.
it's scary on the West. Like um, it's going to be interesting. So, winners and losers on the from trade deadline, and who do you feel has done the best job at trade deadline? Who do you think? We talked a little bit about this, but let's put it into a bow, tie a bow
Okay.
on it.
Well, Dallas is a big winner.
No question.
Dallas is a big winner. I think Florida did very well. Florida, and one thing that like the experts have mentioned that I really agree with is like, yeah, they got Seth Jones. They had salary retained on that, so he's a $7 million a year player now. And if Ekblad doesn't sign with them for whatever reason, then they've got a replacement sitting right
Yep.
there, same type of player. So
Yep.
that was a really smart move. Bill Zito makes really
Yep.
smart moves.
Hmm.
So I'd say Florida and Dallas are the big winners. I do like what Toronto did, given how many things went wrong for them in this deadline. Like, yeah, you said it was a plan D, but that's a pretty good plan D in terms of what they needed.
Yeah, they solved the needs. They needed another steady defenseman, defensive defenseman, getting out of his zone. Brandon Carlo is a big boy who fits that need. And they needed a third line center with some better upside than what they had, and Lawton fills that bill. Now,
Yep. I think Colorado's
is it
now an
enough? That's the
interesting
problem.
team. Yeah, I think Colorado's now very interesting. I'd say I don't that they're like the big mystery, right? Like, are they a winner? Or are they a loser? They made some really interesting and bold moves. They seem on paper like a deeper team than they were, you know, pre Natchez trade and or Rantanen Natchez trade. So I think they look. We knew when they made that trade and freed up money, they had a lot more coming, and they did those things. And I think they're a really interesting team.
Well, I
Um,
think the one that for me, for them, was a surprise, but definitely filled a big void for them was Charlie Coyle. Getting
yeah,
Coyle out of Boston to have some grit and some size down the middle, like not that McKinnon is not sizable, but he's not a physical player. Yeah, he throws his body around, but he's not that guy you send into the corner to beat the crap out of somebody. Charlie Coyle is that guy. He's
yeah,
just somebody that's going to be a pest. He can play both ways. He can play against the top line of the other team and be that pain in their butt. And that's going to be interesting. So I thought for them, that was a big win for them. For sure. There's
yep,
no question.
yep.
For me, I agree with you. I think Florida, obviously Dallas was the big winner on the day. Whoever we got Ratnan was going to be the bigger winner of the day. They didn't give up, they gave up
That
one player on their roster. But
Stankoven's may never be a star. I think he
right.
got
He
like a
scored
goal or
today, by
something.
the way. He
He
scored
scored, yeah.
today. He scored today, but I agree. Like they gave up a lot of picks, but no one covets picks the same way, especially when you're a team like Dallas that's perennial in the top five of the league. It's a late round first pick.
It's not worth that much.
Not it's not as worth the same thing unless you're a bottom feeder.
Yep,
But I agree. Winnipeg did some good things, but did they do enough? They're going to have to rely on their goaltending to get them by. Colorado, I think it's going to be a death nail match between Colorado and Dallas coming out of the West.
yep.
I don't think the Kings did enough to
No, no,
solidify
no, no.
their
They're one and out. in the
And the
playoffs.
big loser to me were the Oilers. They didn't solve anything as far as I'm concerned for
Nope.
their needs, and that's unfortunate because I would like to see. Both of us picked the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup, and I just don't see it happening anymore.
No,
I
unfortunately not.
you know,
Unfortunately not.
so
And
it's
Washington kind of stood pat. They made one move, but they didn't
did
feel like
did they have to? They're the
they're
second,
9 points
first.
up on everybody else. What do they
Yeah,
care? And then
yeah.
Ovechkin's still scoring. He's 9 behind.
Yes, yeah, he's nine behind. No, not eight behind.
He's 8.
Nine from breaking the record. He's got 33 goals on the season, eight empty net goals. Another one today to make it eight. Now, what's
So,
interesting enough, he's not leading the league. He's tied for the lead for empty net goals with Hagel and Ratnan.
oh, that's interesting.
Interestingly enough. But yeah, I don't think they needed to make moves. They seem to everything that's they've pushed is done well. They're going to be able to get out of their division. They were going to be there's no question they're getting out of their division.
Yeah.
New Jersey's the other team with losing Hughes. That was
Losing.
huge.
Yeah. Hughes, write him off. They're done.
Right. They actually might not now. They might not, they're only
They're only a few
two
points up on
points,
Columbus.
4 points. Yeah, the Columbus's points haven't gone in here yet. So they're 2 points up or 4 points up behind. Columbus is behind them. Columbus has got games in hand.
Wow.
I think Columbus might get into that third round pick. And I think New Jersey's going to fall to a
Wild
wild
card.
card position. And then they're going to have to play either Florida or Washington.
Good night.
Four straight. How can you say four straight? Goodbye. Um, so I don't think Washington's going to have a whole lot of trouble getting out of that division. Could be a
It's
surprise with Carolina, maybe. I don't know. I just
maybe
don't see it. I don't think they're going to be able to score enough. And Anderson hasn't proved it in the playoffs either.
no. That's a good
So
point. It's a good point. So my preseason for the Stanley Cup final
we
was
both were.
Edmonton
We
and
had the
New
same
Jersey.
one. Oh, you had Edmonton, New
I had
Jersey.
Edmonton and New Jersey.
I had Edmonton Rangers, and I don't think the Rangers are going to make the playoffs.
Okay.
And I had Edmonton winning it. So if you had to, okay, so who's coming out of the East? Who's coming out of the West today? If you had to redo it.
I am going to say Dallas. I mean, they're going to say it's. I'm going to say Dallas, but if Winnipeg can continue a 30+% power play in the playoffs, Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So like that's my one and 1A.
Who's coming out of the East?
I
Still a crapshoot.
I'm. You're going to be very surprised when I say this. I think Toronto's coming out of the East.
Wow. Wow. Hey, it could happen. I hope you're right. So I have to vote against them just because I think
Reverse psychology.
reverse psychology. Unfortunately, I think it'll be Florida again, which I bugs the crap out of me. Now, let me preface that. If Kachuk comes back, it's Florida.
Okay.
If he doesn't, I'm gonna say Washington gets there. I think it's going to be a magical year for Ovechkin. He
All right.
scores, he breaks the scoring record and miraculously makes it to the Stanley Cup final. I I
Okay.
don't I'm just saying that to be I don't know. It's that fairy tale I want to have come happen now. And I'm gonna disagree with you on the West just to say something different. I'm gonna
Okay.
say Jets. I think Kelly Buck gets over because I want a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. I think the Jets get over the hump. Jets bring the cup back to Canada.
Wow. So you think that not only are they gonna get there, they're gonna win it.
I'm going to say if I'm wrong on that one, whoever comes out of that division wins the Stanley Cup.
Wins the Stanley Cup. So the
Central
Stanley
wins
Cup
the Stan.
winner, Stanley Cup
I'm
winner
handing
is
the
the Central in the
Central
West.
winner wins the cup as far as I'm concerned. I don't think
Okay.
there's three better teams in the league coming. Those three teams are just it's if they're still standing by the end of that those series, it'll be a miracle. But I think whoever comes out of that wins it. I'm saying the Jets because I want the Jets to do it. And I think Ovi gets to the Cup final, which would be great for him, but I don't think he wins it.
Oh, okay. Well, there you have it. That's our that.
Wow, eh?
What a great place to wrap up.
What a great week! What a crazy! And this is gonna be so much fun now. The race to the playoffs, um, changes for 19, 20 games to the cup to the playoffs. It's gonna be so much fun to watch this now.
It's a blast. It's a blast. I'm
Cool.
even going to watch my 500 hockey team and love
Well, and I'm going to get my Leaf jersey ready for you, and I'll be sending it to you. And I want to see you wearing it on this podcast. Everybody else won't see it, but I'm going to have it for you. Do you want the
them.
home or away? Do you want the blue or the white?
Oh God, I don't know. I can't. Don't put that in my head right now.
And I want a picture, and I'm going to frame it and put it on my wall. Alrighty. It's great to see you. I hope you feel better. I hope you get good news tomorrow for
Thanks.
your appointment for the knee. I don't want any excuses when I'm skating around you. So all the best, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
Bye bye.